Welcome to the Living Ageless and Bold podcast. Each episode, I bring you amazing women who inspire, educate, and share their experiences and journeys along the way. So grab a glass of wine or a cup of coffee, find a cozy spot, and let's relax and have some fun hearing what can be accomplished after 55. Hi, everybody. Okay, welcome to today's episode of Living Ageless and Bold. My guest is Sylvia Theisen, and she is going to help us get our midlife mojo back. So, Sylvia, I'm just really excited to have you here today.
I am too. Thanks so much, Christina.
Yeah, I saw your profiles. I was like, okay, we need to talk. How do you get into this, though? How do you get to a point where you're now helping women our age figure out, and we're going to talk a lot about it, but, I would say we didn't wake up in our mid-50s doing this. You got to this point, you saw a need. How did you get to this point?
Yeah, great question. I started out as a social worker and a psychotherapist. So I've always had that love of psychology and personal development. I had a private practice for a lot of years doing therapy. And then when I was a parent raising my kid, I went on a totally different career trajectory and then circled back to my love, which is personal growth and helping people, and actually launched my coaching business during COVID, where I was just seeing there was such a huge need for people, women reevaluating and wanting some guidance. And I always knew at some point I would do the coaching, but that the timing was right. So yeah, here we are.
So, and before we get into what you're doing now, I saw in your LinkedIn profile and you mentioned being a psychotherapist. What is a psychotherapist for corporate America? I feel like all of corporate America needs their own psychotherapist.
It's like that. Someone said, oh, was it like on that show? There was a show where some sexy woman was the therapist. And I'm like, no, I don't think it was that glamorous. But back in the day, employee assistance programs were launching. And so large companies offered their employees a limited number of therapy sessions, and they needed a therapist in each city. So like Sprint, McDonnell Douglas, IBM, all these companies hired me to be the Denver person for their employees. And I loved it. I loved the intersection of being out of my office and in the business world. And it was an eye opener, like what goes on behind closed doors. So I saw it all because like the janitorial staff could come and the C-suite could come. Like it was everything.
Now that could be a good book.
Yeah.
Okay. So I'm 57, empty nester. Both my kids are gone.
Congratulations.
Thank you. But it was one of those, like, I wake up sometimes and, my kids both played travel sports. So it was kind of like they're little and it's hard. And then all of a sudden they're 13 and they're, we're conquering, dividing, going all these different places. And then they're gone. And, I like this podcast. I never will. If you had asked me 5 years ago, would you do a podcast? I'd say no way, but it's keeping me busy. I love it. I'm passionate about it. But there are a lot of women our age who, that's why I love where you call it getting your mojo back.
Yeah.
So help us get our mojo back.
Yeah. And I look at it this way. I think we're pioneers and we're the powerhouses on the planet right now because there's never been a generation of women in our position. We're the most educated generation of women over 50. We have the most resources. We're the first generation of women over 50 where many of us have been active and physically like exercise and athletic our whole life. So our physical trajectory is different. Women over 50 are launching new businesses and being entrepreneurial at record paces. So I strongly believe, Christina, in 100 years, 200 years, when people look back on the, evolution of everything, this is right now is going to be a really pivotal turning point for women. This whole pro-aging movement where women are no longer willing to feel dismissed after 50, it's all super new.
And how this started. And my husband, he tells it, it's really funny if you listen to him tell the story, but there was a certain CNN anchor who said that Nikki Haley was past her prime at 56. And again, this has nothing to do with politics, but that male anchor, was 56 when he said it. And I was like, and my husband says he could literally see the steam coming out of my head, and that's it. I'm launching this podcast. I'm telling the stories of these incredible women over 50. But I had no idea. So we're, I think, almost 75 episodes in.
Wow. Congrats.
I didn't know what I was going to find. I didn't know what I was going to uncover. And these women, exactly what you just said, are phenomenal and passionate about causes. And they've done their jobs. We raised our kids. Hopefully you did a good job. And, I feel like I checked these boxes, but now I can do what I want to do for me, for society. Like, I want to share people like you with the world.
Yeah. And that's the gift, is that you're in this place, like so many women, where you have unlimited possibilities. And then the flip side of that, the challenge is, if you think about it, like when you said you're checking off all the boxes, did the career, raised your kids, all these things. But what a lot of women describe, it's like you've been on the superhighway and there's all these marked exits. And then you get to 50 or 55 or 60, whenever it hits you, and you look at the path and don't see what is ahead. Like, there aren't these markers of, what are those boxes people check over 50, or what is the trajectory? And a lot of very smart, dynamic, high functioning women say that they're feeling lost for the first time. They're like, I know I have unlimited possibilities, but I don't actually know what I want to do. I don't see the future.
How do you help people see the future?
Well, that is the beauty of coaching, is women usually come to me because they're asking, like, am I depressed, or am I just flat, or is this just what I can expect for 50s and over? And that's a really hard mindset to vision from. Like, when you're feeling like, I don't see anything, and, I just don't feel myself, it'd be hard to sit down and say, well, let's create your dream life. So the first step of that is usually it's so much easier to identify what we don't want. And I take women through a process of, let's look at who are the people and the habits and the situations that are draining your energy, that are not fueling you, that are you're overgiving, you're resentful. And it's crazy, Christina, like within weeks, not months, women start shifting that and they feel more energetic. They're sleeping better. They start getting their mojo back. And then we can start the process of, okay, what do you really want? Like, what lights you up? And it's not an overnight thing.
I've had other guests on before, not exactly like this, but talking about this. But sometimes that toxicity comes from, like, within your family.
Yeah.
And that's a hard one to walk away from, because they're your family.
Yeah. Yeah. And one of the things I teach is, like, the way I think of it is, our generation of women, we didn't learn how to make ourselves the top priority. So we got really good at taking care of everybody else's needs. And one of the things that women benefit from learning is how to disappoint other people in a healthy way, so that you don't disappoint yourself. Because you can't go through life and keep everybody happy. And in this transition of creating what you want, being more true to yourself, taking better care of yourself, you're going to piss some people off and you're going to disappoint some people. There's no way around it, because they've had a really good deal. Like, people in our lives that we've been giving to ahead of ourselves, they've had a sweet deal, and they would prefer that it continued that way.
Sure. That's that whole,
no one's going to start applauding, like, yeah, go take care of yourself. I'll just be over here.
Right. So when we, excuse me, we get some of that stuff out of our head. But it is scary. It's like, because I know, like you said, I always had somebody to take care of. I had my kids, and I had this, and then you're alone, and figuring out and having the confidence. Like, I was pretty scared to do this
Yeah,
podcast.
I bet.
Yeah, I was like, oh, what if nobody listens? What if nobody
Right.
likes it? You get those things in your head that, and again, when you're thinking about you, I'm not taking care of other people anymore. How do you get those things out of your head?
Yeah. And part of it is, let's use your example, like you've raised your kids and you were taking care of other people. And a lot of women are afraid that what I'm intimating is, oh, you've been this over giver, you need to be less giving. And that's not what it's about. It's about allowing yourself to be on the receiving end of that giving. And so just as you gave energy and time and interest to your kids or to your spouse or to your career, it's like, well, also allow yourself to give that same nurturing, that same support, that same attention to yourself. Whereas for a lot of women over 50, the whole generation, it was like you gave to everybody else and gave attention to everything else. And if there was anything left over, then you could give to yourself. And so it's just kind of flipping that on its head, that if you can give to yourself first, then you end up giving from the overflow. What's left is you can graciously and joyously give to other people and other things because you're filled up. You're not resentful. And the resentment thing is big because usually if you look at where you're feeling resentful, 99% of the time, it's because we've chosen to overgive. We haven't spoken up for ourselves. We're doing too much. We're giving too much. And then we're irritated or resentful or pissed off at the other person. And the beauty in that is we can change it once we own it. But it's tough. It's tough to change in a vacuum. Like, I think part of what's great about coaching is it's that accountability and the support and the nudging you to, when your family gets pissed off that you're not doing for them, we're going to talk about it and send you back out to practice again. It's hard to do on your own.
Yeah. And I'll tell you, just kind of on the flip side of that too, that something I struggle with is, I guess, call it being a control freak. I took care of my family, and like we do a big tailgate, like all the stuff that I'm in charge of. And my husband's always like, people want to help. You've got to let people in to help. Like, and it's been very difficult for me, but over the last couple of years, I really have. And I love it. Like, it's so nice to have people helping and doing things. And it doesn't have to just be me.
Yeah. And how did you practice that? Like, how did you realize you needed to change that?
I just kind of did it. And it was hard. The first time I did it, and he really pushed me on it. He's like, people want to help. They want to be part of this. And, but it's, especially like a type A person like I am, who's, I ran my business, I ran my family, I ran my kids, I did this and this, to be able to say, okay, but it's kind of cool. I kind of like it.
Yeah. And then you're allowing other people to be the givers.
Yeah. And that makes them feel good.
Right. And then you get to balance your ability to be a receiver, because it is like a teeter-totter, right? You can't always be in giving mode and keep that balance. And so learning to be a good receiver is a life skill. And so many women say, oh my God, I can't believe I didn't learn this earlier in life. And it's like, well, women after us, younger women, you can see it. It's super exciting. They are getting so much better at it. Like, if you look at the 20-somethings and the 30-somethings, they're so much more able to ask for help. They're asking their partners to do half the household work, childcare. They're taking days off and, going to do the spa things. And I feel like my generation, I'll be 65 next month. And I feel like my generation sometimes says, like, it's almost not a jealousy, but it's like a judgment of that. Oh, we didn't do that. We didn't take time out for ourselves. And I would say, no. We need to support that the women who are coming after us are learning this earlier in life. And it's a good thing. Whereas a lot of us, I think, got our value out of being the woman who doesn't need anything. Like, I got it covered. You don't need to bring anything. I don't need any help. And that was somehow like, that was a badge of honor.
I was just going to say it was a badge.
Yeah.
And I have a daughter who's 24, and her roommates, and I watch them, and it is very different. And I watch them, with their significant others, and even just dating, and again, my husband always teases me. I always say, "Oh, I'm fine. I'm fine. I don't need help. I've got this. I've got this." But I do believe it's how we were raised. And
Yeah.
I was raised, I'm first generation American. So my parents were both German. So I have strong German women who, like, my grandmother was Jewish in Berlin during World War II.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. So that was my role model that's probably the strongest woman I've ever known in my life. And she just took care of everything. That was what she did.
And it was admired. It was impressive. Like, we looked at that and went, wow. My mom was part of why I started my coaching. My mom was, I'm one of 9 kids. So
oh, wow.
She was 100% Italian, moved to the States after she married my dad. She was an only kid, met my dad's family, one of 10 German farmers, 10 kids on the farm.
Oh my gosh.
And she looked at my dad and she said, that's what I want. So she went on to have 9 kids, but she was just this powerhouse. She spoke 6 languages fluently. She got her PhD while she was raising us. She became a professor, traveled the world. But when she hit the traditional retirement, she hit that phase that you and I are talking about, Christina, where she had been this high power, get it done kind of woman, and then felt like things were winding down and she didn't see what was ahead. So she decided to have a second career and went to massage school at like 70.
I love it.
The first time I ever heard the word ageism was when she started applying for jobs. And of course, nobody was going to hire a 70-year-old woman with no experience. And she started talking about this thing, ageism. And we were all kind of like, what's mom onto? And really, she passed away in her 80s, but her bright light really diminished because she never found like her purpose, her passion. She just couldn't find her way. And I think that was that generation. They were, very rewarded and adored for how much they got done, how much they didn't need anything, but it came at a huge cost.
Well, and I also think you talk about your mother being 70. You're probably a very different 60-year-old than she was at 60. Yeah. So we have that. And then our daughters, it's going to be like you talk about, health and fitness and all these things. It's just a different, we have so many more resources, and add in the internet. And
oh my gosh.
It's just a totally different place. Like now your mother could start her own massage business in her community and, do a Google business, and, she would have had that opportunity.
Yeah. And you think of, like, you and I were talking about Leslie Jane Seymour and the Covey Club. All these women over 50 being entrepreneurial, starting new ventures, and wanting to support other women doing that. And again, we're the first generation where that's even been an option. Imagine our mothers or our grandmothers finding women who wanted to support them and starting new business. Like, that just wasn't a thing.
Right. No, exactly. I think of my grandma, my German grandmother, we would get up in the morning and we'd walk to the butcher, and then we'd walk to the bakery, and, she had her bags, and, we would do all that. And then before everybody woke up, we had the whole breakfast spread done. And that was what she did. She took care of her family, and just a different time.
I think it's exciting. We're in such an exciting opportunity. It's an amazing time to be a woman over 50, over 60. Some of my clients are over 70 and wanting to sort things out in their 70s. I'm like, how cool is that?
Yeah. My mom is 81, and I joke that they live in the old folks home. It's a retirement community.
Yeah.
It's not even assisted living, but I love to tease them. But her sister lives 2 buildings down. But my mom is kind of like the techie person there, and she prides herself on, being able to get videos uploaded for people and,
Oh my
getting
gosh.
people's computers set up. And I was like, good for you. Like, good for you to
That's
do that.
amazing. Did you
Yeah.
get that from her? Are you techie?
No, but it's fun. But she'll call me for help with stuff. And I felt
Yeah.
so bad. I was traveling and she couldn't figure something out with YouTube for church. And it was just that she needed an unlisted versus a private link. And I
Yeah.
was like, oh, Mom, she spent 3 days trying to figure it out. And I was like, oh, if I had known, I could have told you quickly.
Oh, I love that you two can share that though.
Yeah. So, but it's fun, but she's constantly, and where I always tease her that, oh, you're so stressed for a retired 81-year-old. You're constantly, but then I had another guest on. She said, no, you should be really happy that your mom is going, that she's constantly, using her brain and doing new things and keeping herself young, 81
Oh,
years
she
young,
sounds
doing this.
amazing. You have a
Yeah.
good role model.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah, Energizer Bunny, I don't think I'll ever stop. I won't retire.
Yeah, I think that's a common theme right now with women of our age is that the traditional retirement isn't appealing to everybody. And if it is appealing, that's great. And that's still such an option. But so many women are saying, yeah, I don't want that traditional retirement where you're never going to work again. You don't have anything like a passion project. And it's kind of, there's like more paths now, right? You can choose as long as we're healthy, as long as we have our computers.
But you're right. I mean, the sky is the limit now with anything. And I would say, these women my age, hopefully you've done well enough that you've got a little bit of money socked away, and hopefully you're not taking care of your 20 or 30-year-old kids anymore. You've launched them and they've got that. And, now it's our time. I heard it's, the 60s are the go-go years. The 70s are the slow-go years. And then 80s and above are the no-go years. So take advantage of the go-go and the slow-go while you
I've
can.
never heard that.
Isn't that great?
Yeah. I do feel that, like with adventure travel, I feel like 60s and 70s are when you want to be doing it. Don't put it off. Hopefully we're all lucky and healthy, but now's the time.
Exactly. And my in-laws, she is, 10 or 15 years younger than my father-in-law, and he's in his mid 80s now. And he worked. That's what men in that generation did.
Yeah.
They worked and then they retired, or they left the job and then they worked some more. And he worked probably till he was like 70, but now they're traveling all over the world, but it's getting to be too much for him. And she's younger, so she wants to go and do. So that's like, I'm learning watching this, that I keep saying to my husband, we know we're doing stuff now. We're in our late 50s, almost. He'll be 60 next year. It's like, let's go while we can. Let's go.
I love your attitude. Yeah. And with your theory of the go-go years, I think it's a great time to think about, like, what in the travel category, what are the trips that take a lot of energy, right? Like, you really have to be feeling like super energetic and upward. And like, now's a great time to do that. My dad just passed away right before his 100th birthday. So wow. I always say, I've got some good longevity. Like, what if I lived another 30 some years? It's crazy.
That's a whole lifetime. Wow. Yeah. We did a safari last year, and that's one of those, you're up at 5 a.m. for your morning safari. It takes a lot, but it's like, I've got to do that one more time.
Where did you go?
We went to Kenya and Tanzania.
Oh my gosh. What a trip.
Oh, it was. And there's no such thing as a bus or a cab. You get around on little airplanes that land just on the dust grass right there, and how they know to get you, that's your airplane. And, oh, somebody missed a flight, we're going to go to that field over there and pick them up. And it's a whole different world, different lifestyle, but just absolutely incredible to experience.
Oh my gosh. Did you take your daughter?
We actually took our son. Our daughter just started her job. It was his idea. He had gotten a promotion and got an extra 2-week vacation, and his friends didn't have that. So mom, after a few glasses of wine, said, well, let's go on a safari. And next thing I knew, we were going on a safari.
Good for you.
It was incredible. Mm-hmm.
Wow.
Yeah. A great experience. But again, being, mid to late 50s, but being healthy and being in a position where we could afford something like that because we've worked hard and made smart decisions. And I just think there's more women like us, and talking about the podcast. And I'm really trying to get this to keep putting this out to the universe, but to another level, and understanding for advertisers and marketers to understand we control 98% of all luxury purchases, women over 50, because we're dealing with our parents. You said your dad just lived to be 100, and our children, our adult. I mean, my kids ask my advice. What do you think about this? Should I spend money on this? What do you, so we're pretty powerful. We got a lot of stuff.
Oh my gosh. When you see the stats on, women's purchasing power and why advertisers should be paying attention to us, it's kind of crazy.
It is crazy. And that's why that's part of this podcast too. It's like, hello, we're who you want to talk to.
Yeah. And what is your goal with the podcast? You said you want to take it to another level. What does that look like?
Yeah, I would love it to be a docuseries or something where it's just on a bigger platform. Because like I said, I had no idea when I started that there were women like you who help women like us figure it out. Who knew that was a thing? And then the stories of women who have figured it out, and the businesses they're starting in their 60s and their 70s. And I'm like, oh, they're changing the world, like really changing the world.
Yes.
And then I speak to students, and when I tell my story, and I have a 21-year-old say to me, oh my gosh, I'm not washed up. Like, you did this. I mean, my whole life, I started a whole new chapter after 50. I became a lifestyle expert on TV. I got accepted as a QVC guest host. I have an agent for that in my mid-50s. Like, right. I started a podcast. I like all these things I did after 50. So the sky is the limit for us. It really is.
Yeah, you're just getting started, Christine. Imagine what you're going to start after 60, after 70.
I know what's possible. It's just incredible. But let's say, so somebody's listening and they're stuck. The kids are gone. And I see this with some of my neighborhood friends where they chose to stay home, which there is no judging on this. Whether you worked and your kids were in daycare, there's issues with that, or you stayed home, with your kids and you didn't work. But the kids are gone and they've spent so much time with them, 24/7, running booster clubs, running swim teams, doing this. And then they don't have their identity. And, a lot of them are looking at their spouses like, oh, hey, like, who are you? What's some advice that you would give that woman to get over that hump?
Yeah, the first thing I always say is, because there's so many hormonal issues with women over 50, I always think if you're feeling kind of flat or unmotivated or unsure or lost, first thing, I am a strong believer of getting a functional or naturopathic medicine person on board. Because my experience and a lot of my friends and clients' experience is, if you're feeling like not in your prime, we talked about how it's harder to vision from a place. If you're not sleeping and you feel a little flat, it's going to be hard to be like, whoa, what am I going to do with my life? And the experience I've had is, a lot of the traditional doctors who are excellent miss a lot of things with women over 50 and just say, oh yeah, your labs are a little off, but you're aging. It's okay that you're more tired.
It's menopause. You're all going through that.
Right. The functional medicine docs are amazing, and fairly quickly. Like, I have all my clients, I mean, it's optional, but I highly encourage them to go get checked out. The functional medicine people help women feel better so much more quickly. So that's the first step.
I want to tell everybody, just to back up what you're saying. I have some medical issues going on, and I had been with the traditional doctor, and they just couldn't fix it. Like, they couldn't, nothing changed. And I went to a functional medicine doctor who put me on all natural supplements. And he basically explained, we're going to use your body to fix your body. And It's an all encompassing and it's all natural. And within a week, 1 week, everything changed for me to the positive.
Isn't it wild?
And it makes sense when you listen to them talk about, we don't need to pump ourselves full of medicines. We don't. Like he said, we can get your body to fix your body all by itself. We just need to kickstart it.
And unfortunately, a lot of women don't get a second opinion and just take that. Even really good doctors who are doing good work, if they haven't gotten a specialty with menopause, perimenopause, postmenopause, they're just missing stuff. And our generation was still trained to listen to the doctor, and a lot of women leave thinking, "Oh well, like, yeah, I guess I'm just going to be tired and feel like shitty more often." So that's the first thing. And then one thing that's really surprising that I can never predict, but a lot of times when women, like you described, they've been home, maybe they didn't have a career outside the home, they're wondering what to do. It's crazy how many times through the process of self-discovery through coaching, how there's something that we as women abandoned earlier in life that's wanting to be birthed, like a creative pursuit or a passion. So like one woman comes to mind, she was an attorney for many years, raised her kids, burnt out on law. And she came to me with a goal. She said, I need to find my mojo to apply for my last law job. Like I still want to work for 5 years, but I'm totally unmotivated. Well, took her through my coaching process. And what came out is she hated law. And she'd always wanted to be a writer. Her family told her that's unrealistic. It's irresponsible. Pick a career. Well, by the end of coaching, we celebrated she was getting her first paycheck as a writer. And she had abandoned law and was starting to write for nonprofits. And I have dozens of those stories that it's not always sometimes it's coming up with something new, but sometimes it's giving yourself permission of, if you're really honest with yourself, what's that thing that you wished you'd always done or that you fantasized about, but you're embarrassed to say it because it sounds so out there? And a lot of times that's what comes out. So it's like a process that you can't predict, but there's some themes there.
Right. Oh, I love that. So where can people find, what's your website if they want to learn more about how to do this?
Yeah, right now my website's being redone and it's down, but the easiest place to find me is either on LinkedIn, just under my name, or Instagram, Midlife Coach, Sylvia Midlife Coach.
Okay. And we'll have everything in the show notes.
Yeah.
So I wrap up every episode with the same 2 questions. What is the greatest thing you've accomplished since you turned 50?
Greatest thing I've accomplished since I turned 50, I'd have to say first thing that comes to mind is launching my coaching business. And the reason I feel so good about it is the 2 things that women always say to me is, A, why didn't I learn this sooner? And 2, it changed my life. And I'm like, wow, I feel like I get to be part of this ripple effect we're talking about, where there's women all over the world helping women. And I'd say off the bat, that is what I'm most excited and proud of right now.
Oh, amazing. And then where do you see yourself in 10 years?
10 years, I'll be 74. I'll be turning 75.
75 years young.
Yeah, I picture my ideal I'm going to be really healthy, a little eccentric, a little dangerous. And I love to think I'll be doing some pursuit, some iteration of what I'm doing now, but I bet it'll evolve and it'll change. Kind of like you're saying with the podcast, like you see bigger things, but I see myself hopefully being really engaged and still passionate about helping women.
Oh, I'm sure you will be.
Thank you.
So anybody watching or listening, if you know somebody in their 50s who's lost their mojo, make sure you share this episode with them because we've got some great advice from you, Sylvia, and then they can look you up and find you. And thank you so much for joining us today.
Thanks. This was so fun. Thank you, Christina.
Thank you for listening or for watching this episode of Living Ageless and Bold. If you haven't already, please make sure you hit subscribe And if you like the episode, I hope that you will give us a great review. You can also head over to livingagelessandbold.com and sign up for information, inspiration, and exclusive opportunities for us, women over 55. Thanks for listening. And remember, no matter what you do, keep living ageless and bold.